always forgotten to look at, which is the demand side of the water. Okay, do you want to go ahead, Dr. Capiano? We are not going to take any questions and comments now because we have two more. And then I will go directly to Semu. Dr. Semu Moges is going to talk about hydro-egoism and misinformation, addressing barriers for equitable and sustainable use of the Nile. He is a professor and chairman of EWAC Hydraulics, Water and Environment Team. And Dr. Semu, you have 20 minutes. You are muted, Semu. You are muted.
Thank you once again, Professor Asafa. My topic, I think, even though the topic is a little bit different, Professor Isaias have touched over many of the things that I would like to talk. So my topic is how hydro-egoism and disinformation in the way of Nile negotiation, and how do countries transit this blockage of mental blockage between the countries. So I think most of the issues I would like to discuss was mentioned. I quickly go into some of the important characteristics that we have in the Nile. Overall, many of the presenters alluded that it is a region with extremely expanding population, land degradation, water scarcity, not water scarcity, but water crisis because of lack of management, as Professor Isaias says. I also agree with that. And this is a region with a colonial legal regime in terms of water resource, and there is cooperation dilemma within this region. And overall, this is one of the poorest region in the country. These are known facts that can be quantified, and the known unknowns that we know things, but we cannot certainly predict. Climate change is obviously havoking the region. We have a lot of unaccounted hydrological water resources that is not counted yet. We have Nile vision that is subjective, that's not properly quantified or objectivized into implementation for the countries. We have a lot of technologies that's not implemented or tested. So there are a lot of known unknowns. That means issues that we know that can operate but is not tested. And of course, there are a lot of global challenges, regional challenges that are not unknown for us. We never predicted we would have war in Ethiopia again. So this such kind of unknown unknowns would also surface. So countries should really be in control of the known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. We have always in a increasing uncertainty globally. So my talk today is on hydroegoism, how it affects cooperation. Before that, I would like to talk hydrohegemony. Hydrohegemony is a kind of influence of countries on the basis of three articulated features. One is when a country is located upstream or downstream of a country based on this position. Second is due to power. If you have a military economic power, or you have a strategy of stalling, and you have a securitization of the water resource, that's also power. And the third is exploitation power, if you have finance and infrastructure. So because of these three factors, you can classify countries hydrohegemony. For example, if you see Sudan, it's not part of the hegemonic countries in the Nile. Egypt is hegemonic country in terms of power and in terms of utilization, and Egypt and Ethiopia and Sudan is a hegemonic country in terms of having being located upstream of the country. So once we categorize countries, Ethiopia is a hegemonic country, hydrohegemonic country in terms of being upstream country. Egypt is a hydrohegemonic country in terms of having power and at the same time utilization capacity. So in this definition, we can have a hydrohegemonic country with that affects negatively or positively. We can say countries that have positive hegemonic impact on the riparian countries. They are part of the what we call HydroSolidarity, or they are positive influencers. And countries who are mostly focusing on their national interest or their national issues on transboundary rivers, we can categorize them as hydro-egoist countries. So we can see, as an example, South Africa in the SADC region, they have a SADC water protocol. They have many transboundary rivers that they share and they quietly cooperating and using. So South Africa, in terms of power, in terms of development capacity, they are hegemonic country, hydro-hegemonic country in the SADC, and yet their role is towards positive hydro-hegemony. Whereas Egypt in the Nile country has hydro-hegemonic in terms of power and in terms of development. However, it prioritizes its self-interest and unilateralism over the regional development. So we have seen from different presentations that over the last 100 years, development in Nile Basin was unilateral, and this hydroegoism or focusing only on national interests have affected the whole region in terms of development. So what are the manifestations of the hydroegoism in the Nile Basin? One is basin foreclosure and harm. Second, unilateral policies are practiced in the region. Stalling of negotiations that started, securitization, disinformation, and as Dr. Isaias said, also presentation of water as a water supply issue instead of both water supply and demand issue. When we say foreclosure, if countries utilize dominantly the water resource of riparian countries for one or two countries dominantly use, or 100% of the water, that means they foreclosed it, or you can't have more water to access because it's foreclosed. So when it comes to Nile Basin, there is what we call 1959 agreement and other agreements that have been signed over the last 78 years that says 100% utilization and control of water by downstream countries. So this foreclosure has significant harm on the upstream countries to utilize their water resources. Salman has perfectly presented that downstream countries significantly can harm upstream countries by foreclosing future water resources. Therefore, foreclosure is a way of harming downstream countries, the upstream countries. Of course, it can be the reverse. If the upstream countries utilize and foreclose all of the water, it's also a harm to downstream country. Yeah, UN convention says countries should utilize water resource equitably and reasonably without appreciable harm to riparian states. It doesn't say it for upstream countries or downstream countries. Therefore, in this case, basin closure has affected upstream countries of the Nile. And this is one of manifestations of hydroegoism in the Nile basin. You can see 100% of the water is generated from upstream countries, and almost 100% of the water resources utilized by downstream countries. And yet, still, they negotiate not to protect the water resource of the shared water resource. The second, of course, is, I have also alluded it, 1959 bilateral agreement and non-inclusive agreement is one of the manifestation of the hydro-egoism in the region. Especially in 2014 Egyptian constitution, Egypt has included in its constitution stating that we are going to defend our historical rights of water resource. This is a typical manifestation of hydroegoism. This is a shared resource that 100% of the water resource comes outside of the Egypt border. So I think, especially as I told you, this unilateral, I said unilateral because it is dictated, this 1959 agreement is dictated by Egypt. So it's not even bilateral, it is a unilateral arrangement for total, as you can see here, it says full control of the Nile basin. Why? They found out that the Nile water agreement concluded in 1929 provided only for the partial use of the Nile water. And then, no, this is not okay. We have to proceed with 100 or full control of the water resource. That's why 1959 agreement is, because this partial use of the water resource didn't satisfy Egyptian government. Therefore, I think this is a typical manifestation of hydroegoism in the region. And the third manifestation is stalling of negotiation. In the Nile basin, there were a lot of negotiations for cooperative framework agreements that started a little bit earlier than NBI. NBI engagement, Eastern Nile Subsidiary Action Program for Eastern part of the Nile, Ethiopia, Egypt, Sudan. A joint multi-purpose project that was initiated by the three countries of Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. That was studied properly, and it was about to be launched. And also, of course, GERD. In all of this, of course, as I have to repeatedly say, Egypt declined to be part of all these negotiations. It is really a way of stalling negotiations. And it has been also referred in one of known journals, the GERD Nile Norms of Cooperation in the Nile Basin by Kaskau and Allard. Egypt declined to participate in a joint multi-purpose project. This is a project that's initiated between these three countries. They have further gone into development of projects. So at the end of the project agreement, where Sudan and Ethiopia was okay with the projects, they declined. So this declining of agreements after extended negotiation happened is a tactical approach or stalling of negotiation. That's a manifestation. The writer of hydroegoism also indicated the stalling tactic is one of the tactics of egoistic countries. And then over the last 30, 40 years, there is government level securitization of the Nile. You can read Anwar Sadat in 1979, the only matter that takes Egypt to war is water. Al-Sisi repeated it in 2020. Egyptian water rights are national security issues. Egypt, Sudan agree water is a matter of national. So they elevated the resource that is shared between 11 countries into the high level of securitization to a political, even beyond the political level. That's where things are becoming out of proportion in every riparian countries. I know or little knowledge that I know many of the countries have elevated the Nile issue to national security issue. But of course, now because of the elevation of this issue into national security issues, nations are also elevating a Nile issue to security issue. For example, in Ethiopia now, Nile has water resource in general and Nile in particular has become an issue of national security issue as we continue to study. And the last, the fifth is this information. There is a lot of scientific, pseudo-scientific presentations in many of the articles, in many of the web pages that purposely or intentionally disinforming the public. For example, it says 1 billion meter in one of the embassy's webpage, Egyptian webpage. It says 1 billion meter cube loss from GERD would cost Egypt 290,000 Egyptians income eliminated, 130,000 hectares lost, and all this information. While we know that the hydrological over the last 30, after even Aswan Dam was constructed, the hydrological variability of Nile is even sometimes greater than the mean annual of Blue Nile. There is always that variability that has never havocked Egyptian agriculture, that has never affected the socio-economic activities of Egypt. Therefore, to say 1 billion reduction due to filling affects Egypt is simply a misinformation. We have done modeling with over the last 10 years, even the flow that is as low as 1984 drought will not affect significantly the agriculture of Egypt. Therefore, this disinformation is purposely disinforming the public. Of course, the filling disinformation, as you know, it was a sensational presentation in Al Jazeera. You can go 7 years filling of GERD would reduce 12 billion cubic meter of water from Egypt. That means it brings 3 million acres of Egypt out of agriculture. If it's filled with 5 years, 50% of agricultural land would be out of agriculture. All this, science, whether we do it in Egypt or Ethiopia or America, it remains the same. We have run models, scientists did. There is no these numbers coming out of from different scientists, international and we ourselves. So this kind of disinformation sensitizes public, and of course, the public, the more you release disinformation, the more public becomes sentimental, not to the truth, but values that are available at large in the net. So these are one of the issues of hydroegoism products. And another pseudo-scientific presentation that we found out is that there is a big book, an article, sorry, in Geomatics National Hazard and Risk that shows if 2005 millimeter of rain falls around GERD, then GERD would collapse. So they have presented this as a scientific, whereas we have done a long time ago that the probable maximum precipitation that would come once in 66 or 1 million years is only maximum 420. And GERD is also designed for this particular hydrology. There is no any issue on safety of the dam as long as hydrodynamic or hydrology is concerned. There is no 2005 millimeter can rain within a few days. I don't think it is even proportion to the no time rainfall is not even as much as this. Therefore, this information that's come out in different journals are misleading, and we have to really fight it back. So we have presented in different forums, and it was accepted. One of the journal has receded or removed this presentation from their webpage. And the other pseudoscience that is disseminated in web largely is that GERD is built in a seismic zone. And this is a seismic zone from United States USGS. You can check that web page. And in fact, GERD is located in one of the safest regions. Seismic zones are located along the Rift Valley regions, these connected areas. This is the most instinct area. So I don't think there is either safety risk from seismic or from hydrology. And imagine the construction companies that has built over 200 dams all over the world would risk building GERD on this seismic zone if it would have been seismic zone. And you can imagine Ethiopia would invest $5 billion or more if it would have been a seismic zone. So I think the science operates all over the world the same. I don't know why some researchers would like to disinform the public while the science says a different presentation. And the last point on disinformation is that we are always talking, and most of downstream countries are always talking about supply issue. There would be a supply issue downstream. What about management of the water? As Professor Isaias also alluded in many of them, the management of the water is the most critical part of the Nile Basin. And he also cited two researchers, bold researchers from Egypt, said if Egypt used the water resource in its country, more than 40 billion water could be saved from that. So we have to see the supply part, not only for downstream, but there are more than 440 million people in the region, in the Nile Basin part of it. And also this water resource is 70% of the total water in the Nile, in the country. Therefore, these fluxes that are related to this water, energy, food fluxes related to water are also should be available for the entire country where there is dry. Ethiopia is categorized, by the way, 70% of Ethiopia is categorized as dry country. So this is the food, the energy, and the water supply baskets that we have. Ethiopia haven't said.
Semu, you have used your time.
Okay. Give me 2 minutes. Huh?
Okay.
Therefore, how do we break this? I think these three countries have to come into a phased cooperation agreement. The first is they have to agree and build trust on this GERD. And the second is they have to agree and go into a phased agreement on the long-term operation of GERD and upstream development. I think the third is they have to go into Nile cooperative framework for joint sustainable development that includes the entire Nile Basin. I think this is the issue is that we have to get away from the hydro egoism, and we have to step up the cooperative sense of the Nile Basin. I think I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Semu, for your presentations, which you highlighted on the different types of hydro egoism, particularly the Nile Basin. Never thought that Ethiopia is hydro egoist in terms of, by the virtue of its position. I thought Egypt was the one, because Ethiopia has never precluded that the flow of water downstream, except that it has been taken away from the whole water allocation. You also mentioned about the various wrangling techniques that has been used in the Nile Basin, the stalling techniques, the misinformation on filling and operations, particularly the impact, which we really have seen that it has nothing to do, and also the particularly the stability, which is the seismic question, the stability of the dam, which has been raised not only in this but also in one of the forums that we lead at my institution. So these are all different types of stalling techniques, particularly by the lower basin countries, not to actually agree on a very simple, straightforward things. Try to blame the engineering, as I said before, when politics failed to actually close on this issue. So with that, now I'll go to our last but not least speaker, His Excellency Ato Merse Ejigu, why Ethiopia must adopt a comprehensive framework in harnessing its rivers for equity and sustainability. Ato Merse is chairman of the EWAC Environment and Sustainability team. The floor is